Watching Kai wake is better than a sunrise. One moment he's still and down deep. The next moment I can see him returning out of the dark, coming to the surface. His face shifts, his lips move, his eyes open, and then his smile. The sun. At the same time as he bends down to me, I reach up and I'm warmed by his lips. Our lips meet. We talked about the Tyson poem and how we both remembered it and how he saw me reading it in the woods back in Oria. He heard that it was a password before out here when he was young, and more recently from Vic. Kai talks in a soft voice about his friend who helped him bury, and about the girl Vic loved named Lainey. Then in his voice hard and cold, Kai relates the story of his escape and how he left the other villagers. He shines his merciless light on himself and his own actions. But what I see is not who he left, but who he brought with him, Eli. Kai did what he could. I tell him about Indy's version of the pilot and how about the boy who vanished into a different canyon in the carving and how he was looking for something, I say. But I wonder if the boy knew what was behind the society wall and in the canyon, and he died. At last of all, I tell Kai about the blue-marked anomalies on the top of the carving and how I wonder if they could have been part of the rising, and then we fall silent because we do not know what happens next. So the society is in the canyons, Kai says. Eli's eyes widen. They're in our coats too. What do you mean? I ask. And Kai and Eli tell us about the wires that keep us warm and take our data. I ripped mine out, Kai says, and I realize that explains the tears in the fabric of his coat. I glance at Eli, who took a defiance and folds his arms over his chest. I left mine like it is, he says. Nothing wrong with that, Kai says. It's your choice to make. He glances at me, asking what I'll do. I smile at him and I pull off my coat and hold it out. He takes it in his hands, looks at me standing in front of him, as if he still can't believe what he sees. I don't look away. I smile across his lips and then he put the coat out on the ground in front of him, slits the fabric and with swift, sure movements. And when he finishes, he gives me a tinkle of blue wires and a small silver disc. What did you do with yours? I ask him. We buried them, he says. I nod and I begin to dig the dirt to leave mine too. When I finish, I stand up. Kai holds out my coat and I slip it back inside a bit. You should still be warm, he says. It didn't move any of the red wires. What about you? Eli asks Indy. She shakes her head. I'll stay like you, she says, and Eli smiles a little. Kai nods and doesn't seem surprised. What happens now? Indy asks. I didn't think we should try crossing the plain after what happened to your friend. Eli flinches at her bluntness, and Kai's voice when he speaks sounds tight. That's true. They might come back, and even if they don't, the water out here is still poison now. We pull out some of the poison, though. Eli says, why? Indy asks, to try and save the stream. Kai says, it was stupid. It wasn't, Eli says. We didn't get enough of them out to make much of a difference. We did, Eli says stubbornly. Kai reaches inside his pack and rolls out a map, a beautiful thing with colors and markings. We're here now, he says, pointing at the spot on the edge of the carving. I can't help but smile. We are here together. In the wide world, we've managed to meet again. I reach out my hand and trace my finger along the path I took to get to him until my hand meets his on the map. I was trying to find my way to you, Kai says. I wanted to cross the plain and get back to society somehow. We took some things from the farmer's township for trade. That old abandoned settlement, Indy says, we came through it too. It's not abandoned, Eli says. Kai saw a light there. Someone didn't leave. I shiver, remembering the feeling of being followed. What did you take? I ask Kai. This map, he says. And these. He reaches inside his pack and hands me something else. Books. Oh, I say, breathing in the smell, running my fingers along the edge. Do they have more? They have everything, Kai says. Stories, histories, anything you can imagine. They've saved them for years inside the cave or the canyon wall. Then let's go back, Indy says decidedly. It's not safe on the plane yet, and Cassia and I need something to trade. We could get more food too, Eli says. And then he frowns. But that light. Well, be careful, Indy says. It has to be something better than trying to cross the mountains right now. What do you think? Kai asked me. I remember the day back in Oria in the restoration site and how the workers gutted the books and the pages fell out. And I imagined the papers lifting, flying wings, wigging their way for miles until they settle somewhere safe and hidden. Another thought darts into my mind. There might be even more information about the rising among these farmers saved. And what to see in all of the words, I tell Kai, and he nods. That night, Kai and Eli show us a place to camp in Indy, and I did not notice on our way out of the carving, it's a cave. Spacious and large once you're inside, and when Kai shines his flashlight around it, I catch my breath. It's painted. I've never seen pictures like this. They're not real. Not on port or printed out of the scraps of paper. So much color, so much scale. The painting covered the walls, washed up to the ceiling. I turn to Kai. How? I ask him. The farmers must have done it, he says. They knew how to make their own supplies and plants and materials. Are there more? I ask. Many of the houses back in the township are painted, he says. What about these? Indy asks, and she points to another set of art further along the cave wall, carved pictures showing wild, primitive figures in motion. Those are older, he says, but the theme is the same. He's right, the farmer's work is less crude and more refined. The whole wall of girls in beautiful dresses and men with colorful shirts and bare feet. But the motion of the people seems to echo those of the earlier etchings. Oh, I say, do you think they painted a match banquet? As soon as I said it, I feel stupid. They didn't have match banquets here. But Indy doesn't laugh at me. Her expression is as she runs her fingers along the wall. Along the pictures is complex and longing and anger and I hope all together in her eyes. What are they doing? I ask Kai. Both of the sets of fingers are moving. One of the girls has her hands lifted over her head and put mine up too, trying to figure out what she's doing. Kai watches me with that look in his eye, the one that's full of love, and at the same time the one he gives me when he knows something I don't. Something he thinks has been stolen from me. They're dancing, he says. What? I ask. I'll show you sometime, he says, and his voice, tender and deep, sends a shiver through me.